Yes, welcome to another edition of the No State Project and success stories here at markstevens.net. Always glad to do these. There are two success stories here, and got to address some criticism here, especially because we get new people to the show and into the website all the time. And so I've been falsely accused. It's very persistent, and no matter how much evidence has been provided, these trolls continue to lie, saying that my motion has never been granted and I've never had any success in court, period. That whatever tickets were thrown out in all these years, all of them, it's only coincidental that the fact that a defense was raised, none of the dismissals had to do with the actual defense, even when the motion is granted. Even when we've had jury acquittals, it had nothing to do with the defense. These lying critics, even when we have a jury acquittal, like we did in Chandler, Arizona, that had nothing to do with the defense, of the defendant. Nothing to do with it. And that I have only taken credit falsely when something was tossed out. So, obviously, the evidence is against that. So if we go to the success stories at markstevens.net, if we go down to Ron's, this is Ron in Vegas, and he called, actually, we have another success story with Ron. I have always stated if the ticket was thrown out and it was not based on the defense, I have said that. Now, critics will just keep lying and whatever fits their narrative. So take that into consideration. So if you're new to markstevens.net, look at the actual evidence. Look at the proof. So I said right here, while I can't say this dismissal is directly because Ron filed a motion to dismiss and discovery request, this is still significant because it's more evidence we can get these tickets dismissed. Not only that, we don't need a lawyer to do so. So we have to look at the circumstantial evidence like we did with Ron here. Would the prosecution have withdrawn if not or but for Ron's defense? We have to take the whole context, though. And we have to look at whether the defense would have tossed it out if it wasn't a defense. Now, in some instances, that may be true, but what I'm going to do is, with one of the success stories, I'm doing this not just because I would have done it anyway. It's great that whenever someone challenges these people and gets a ticket tossed out. But with this particular one, I want to be able to show this and use this as more evidence. Just like with Ron, I want to show here that I don't take credit where credit isn't due. If it had nothing to do with the defense, then I will say that. So I do apologize for how bad the scan is, but it gets the job done. If you're having trouble reading it, just use the HD function and watch it in HD. But it's fairly clear that it's clear enough that the prosecutor filed a motion to dismiss without cost to the defendant. Now, the reason on this document is very vague. That says the reason for dismissal, county attorney not to prosecute. Now, if I was dishonest, I would just post this as is, because it looks like the prosecutor, in Ron's other case, this is actually Gilberto in Texas, and so again, congratulations to Gilberto for standing up to these predators, these criminals, and thanks for allowing me to post this. Now, again, to get back, if I was the criminal that these lying lawyers have made me out to be, I would just provide page 1, and then I would take credit and say, hey, Gilberto's defense. But that's not what I do. I have never done that. So here is page 2. So I think let me go, I'll blow this up a bit. And so what we can see here, again, it's not a very good scan, but you should be able to make out it is a motion to dismiss, and this is the one that is specific. This is where we find out why they are dismissing. So they give a list of reasons here, and they check other. And so it's very easy to read here. The witness is unavailable. Trooper is no longer employed by Texas Department of Public Safety, and that is signed by a county attorney. and the order is signed by a judge, Marvin Moore, and it's stamped with the clerk of the court. So this dismissal had nothing to do with the defense. I will point out, though, that Gilberto, if he had gotten a lawyer, would have paid thousands of dollars, well, a few grand anyway, would have paid a fine if he made a deal. And there's no way that the prosecutor would have turned around in those circumstances and said, "Oh, by the way, the trooper doesn't even work for for the agency anymore, and I was going to dismiss anyway." But they're not going to disclose that. They're just going to take the fine money. So hey, that's what you get from hiring a lawyer, right? Well, I'm glad he didn't do that. But congratulations for standing up to these people. And that's part of what the big part here is not just to go out and get tickets tossed out. That's great. The big thing here is empowering people and inspiring them to actually challenge these predators in the first place, because that is something that most people will not do. Over 90% of complaints result in a plea. So that's what lawyers do. They just convince people to make a deal instead of fighting it. Well, we're doing this on principle, and that's something that lawyers seem to lack. They don't, obviously, those who run the court system lack principles. Any kind of basic principle of right and wrong, that's not what they go by. They go by legal and illegal and whatever the hell they can get away with, because hey, they got a prison system. So that's the main point, like I mentioned before with Ron, is that we are challenging them and not just taking it lying down. That we're not going to make a deal. This is actually about principles, something lawyers and these critics don't have. Their principle is money. Money and putting out a false narrative against me. So again, if I was dishonest, I would have just posted this. I would have posted the dismissal and not have included the rest. But that's not what I do. But Ron's, we can say, based on the circumstantial evidence, is related to the defense that he launched, because he actually, as I reported on the show, he did go into court and challenge the prosecutor and make his objections, and he was willing to plead guilty if the prosecution had evidence, which they did not have. So he filed the motion to dismiss the discovery request, tried to plead guilty. They didn't have it. So what the prosecution did was, as you can see here, they filed to withdraw as a nolo prosequi, and that was granted. So the judgment was entered against the state, and so that was one of the charges, not traffic. The other charges on this complaint were traffic, but here we have, again, it's Las Vegas, and congratulations, Ron. This is two more charges, code violations. If the prosecutor could support their claims, they would have. If all they have to do is show that Ron was physically in Nevada, and that in and of itself proved a written instrument called the Constitution applied to him, if that's all they had to do, if that actually proved it, they wouldn't have withdrawn. Or why would they have withdrawn? How easy is it to prove that no one driving without a driver's license? That's pretty standard. Either he has it or he doesn't. But they're not able to prove he's required to have one in the first place, because they cannot prove that just because he's physically in Nevada, the laws apply, and that would then create an obligation on him to have a driver's license. So this, but for his defense, would this have been dismissed? I don't think so. But unlike these lying trolls, they will try to tell you there's only one plausible explanation for this dismissal, and that it had nothing to do. It is purely coincidental, just like all the hundreds of other tickets that were thrown out, whether it's the United States, Canada, England, Ireland, and Australia and New Zealand, and Israel. All of those hundreds and hundreds of dismissals, all of them had nothing to do with the defense that was actually raised. Don't you believe it for a second. Some of them, sure, but there's always more explanations when you don't have direct evidence, like here. So this is not going to put to rest and stop these lying trolls from continuing to lie about me. They will, because it's not about evidence with them, it's about the narrative. All the facts have to fit the narrative or you just ignore it. Whatever you have to say to support the narrative that I'm a scammer. So big congratulations again to Gilberto and Ron for standing up to these predators and getting these tickets thrown out, because that's what we want to do. We want to stand up to them and be adults and challenge these people and bring out that they are criminals. Why? Because they force strangers to give them money. And then they turn around and they have lawyers that want to spew this tripe out at us and just say, well, basic principles of right and wrong don't apply to government. Basic principles of logic don't apply to government. That their claims are right because they say so. No, it's not right because they say so. And it's not right because they have a prison system. They're dead wrong. But they get away with what they're doing. They're able to run over us because they do have a prison system and they are willing to use it. It's not because they have proof that their laws apply. It's not because that it's logical to say that their claims don't require evidence. That's ridiculous. Criminals. And I'm glad that we have another example, more examples of people who aren't taking it lying down and they're not going and wasting their money with a member of the bar cult to just make a deal for them. If you're going to make a deal, that's fine. Do it yourself. You don't need a lawyer. And at least file for discovery and get some leverage on the prosecutor and show that they don't have any evidence to support their claims. Let them try to argue. They don't need evidence. Let them at least come out and say that. Yes, they're going to argue against you and have a police officer testify against you that the laws apply and that you violated them, but they don't need to actually testify on cross-examination to that, and they don't have to comply with the rules that say they're supposed to have personal first-hand knowledge. Don't buy it for a second. They're crooks. Stand up for yourself. If you get a ticket, you can get it tossed out. Stand up for yourself. Hold the prosecution to their burden of proof. And if you think I've gotten something wrong here on this short success story video, I got my facts wrong. I got my logic wrong. I'm wrong in my analysis. You're more than welcome to call a live broadcast and set me straight.